This is ABTV, Animal Bites Television.
So stuff is just out of hibernation, and basically when you're hibernating snakes, they're basically just going to sleep for a few months. We actually hibernate for roughly about 3 months, and then they come up, they start feeding and start breeding. The thing that's neat about it here is the fact it's almost like you inherit an entirely new collection of snakes, because some of these snakes I've barely seen for 3 months. They're in a dark, cold room. We check them like once a week, and that's about it. So it's really cool to see them again. I'm going to just showcase some of the things that I'm working with this year. Pretty excited about, starting with this Tarahumara Mountain King Snake. These guys are a Pyromilana, and they're from the Tarahumara Mountains, and they're really cool snakes. They get only about this large. They'll have anywhere from maybe 4 to 7 eggs, a big clutch, typically 7. Every now and then I get lucky to double clutch them, but most of the time you only get 1 clutch a year. So these guys definitely are in high production, but they're super cool with their pattern and color. I've just always been a fan of them, but there's just so many things that I get excited about when I pull out, even like corn snakes. This happens to be a phantom corn snake, and a phantom corn snake is basically a ghost type B aneurystic corn snake. So it's lacking the red and yellow pigment, and it's also a hypo corn snake. So there's so many cool animals. I'm just going to show them off to you guys. It's going to be a really fun show. My name is Brian Barczyk. I'm no zoologist, just a guy with a passion for animals. And that passion often takes me on animal adventures around the world. This week, I'll be showing off my colubrid collection. You're watching Snake Bites. So again, it's just super cool to be seeing these snakes after a while. And again, we hopefully will have babies here in the next few months from these guys. But this is a really good, oh, he's a little bit squirrely on me there. This is an albino Baird's rat snake. And Baird's rat snakes actually are from either the Texas area, or there's actually a subspecies that's from the Mexican area. But these happen to be the Texas locality. And they call them albino Baird's, but the truth is they're really more like a T-positive albino, because they don't have that bright red eyes. So they still does have that tyrosine in them, so that makes them that purpley look. But they're really cool, and it's something that I've been working with for several years, well, actually probably 10 or 12 years now. So it's pretty cool to see if I can reproduce more of them each year. And take a look at this guy here. Wow. Now, of course, this is a scaleless Texas rat snake. And we work with really 2 specific types of scaleless Texas rat snakes here. We have the normals that come out sometimes, they're really beautiful, but sometimes they have some scaling and they're not super bright and beautiful. And then we've been working with this line that is really, really beautiful. It's either this pastel gray and orange color, sometimes even bright red. And then we're calling them like super scaleless Texas rat snakes. And again, of course, the Texas rat snakes are from Texas, and they sometimes get a little bit mean, but this guy is really beautiful, and I love producing these guys. Now that was close. I felt the wind right on my chin there. What an awesome snake. And let's take a look over. Oh, check this out. These are really cool. These are actually ghost emery rat snakes. Now, these are really closely related to corn snakes, actually. And as a matter of fact, at one time, they were a subspecies of a corn snake, really. They have a lot of the similar mannerisms, but they don't have quite as many eggs, and the eggs are much larger, and the babies hatch really big. And of course, these are what they are called ghost emery rat, which really isn't a double mutation like a ghost corn. It's actually just a single mutation. That's more like a hypo, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, it's a really cool snake. And we also work with albino emerys, so that's kind of cool. And speaking of another albino, take a look at this guy here. Whew, this guy looks like he's fired up, huh? This is an albino greenish rat snake. And you can see it just wants to chomp on me big time. But the greenish rat snakes actually are from the southeastern part, like usually northern Florida, even sometimes into Georgia. And of course, this is the albino version here. And I've always loved these guys. I think that they're really cool. Lori hasn't been a fan so much of the greenish rat snakes because they're sometimes a little bit mean and sometimes a little dirty. But I personally really love the greenish rat snakes, and the albinos just make them even that much more beautiful. What a cool snake. So there's just really a lot of colubrids to show you guys. There's no way I can show everything because it would be a 2-hour show, but I'm just kind of showing some of the highlights. Like, take a look at this guy here. This is a Mandarin Rat snake, and I've always really loved the Mandarin Rat snakes. And of course, when they used to come in from China, like 99.9% of them would die. And that was a handful of things. Number one, they were heavily parasitized, but more importantly, what happened was almost all of the animals that came out of China, and really still kind kind of do usually come from the food markets. What happens is the animals are so neglected at those food markets. By the time they get in the hands of someone like me that's actually going to care for them, their body is just too shut down. Their liver and bladders are destroyed from not having water or food for sometimes months on an end. You got to remember, when they're in the food markets, they don't care for them properly. So unfortunately, the mandarinas that come in now are terrible, and I actually encourage you guys to never buy anything from a food market that's imported. These guys are being captive bred now by people like me and bunches of others, and they do fantastic. I mean, literally, they're almost like a corn snake. They still take a little more skill than a corn snake, but they're not that bad. Once you get the babies eating really consistently, they're just absolutely incredible animals. And we've been breeding them now for probably 10 or 12 years, and every year we have great success. So again, Mandarin rat snakes, beautiful animals, but definitely if you ever want to get into them, make sure you get into captive bred ones. They do like it a little bit cooler as well, but we just keep them at the bottom of racks, and they do absolutely fantastic. Here's another gorgeous one here. Of course, this is an albino Nelson's milk snake. And the albino Nelson's milk snakes are probably the most common, the most bred for sure. And that's for a couple reasons. Number one, they're really easy to keep, and they're relatively prolific. They're going to have anywhere from 6 all the way up to 10 eggs twice a year. So a female is going to give you maybe 12 to 20 eggs. So they reproduce a lot, and they become pretty inexpensive. The first one that I ever bought, believe it or not, was $2,000 for a little baby albino milk snake. Now they're south of $100. So they're a great animal, beautiful, and if you ever want something awesome, it's a good choice. Now these blaze goini are something that I've really got into over the last few years. Now the goini are actually blotched kings, or what they call sometimes Apalachicola County king snakes. And they're similar to say a South Florida king snake or a Brooks king snake because they kind of act the same. They get a little bit smaller, but almost the same size. And as a matter of fact, some people think that they actually are a naturally occurring hybrid of a chain king, which is more northern up into the Georgia area, and of course the Florida king, which is the king snake, which are Brooks kings from South Florida. Regardless of what they are, they're certainly amazing animals. And the blaze in particular, when they hatch, instead of being kind of an orange and black color, they're like a bright red, almost like the albino milk snakes. So they're really cool. And again, the thing that's neat about the goini is the fact that they get sizable. They are really aggressive feeders, but as you can see, also puppy dog tame. So to me, I think they're just an all-around great snake, to be honest with you. And speaking of a great snake, one of my favorite colubrids for sure happens to be the Mexican black king snake, or the nigritas. Now, I love the cribos, like you guys have seen Maya and Rico, and of course there's a relative of those called an indigo snake, which is that solid black snake. Well, this is what I always call the poor man's indigo. And the problem with the indigos is in most cases you need permits to keep them, and they get big and they're a little bit messy. These guys are nice and inexpensive. They don't get quite as big, but they still have that jet black, shiny look to them, which makes them absolutely adorable. So again, if you want something like an indigo, but you can't afford it, you don't want to go through the permit process, Mexican Black King is the poor man's indigo. All right, I'm going to take a deep breath because I'm going to nail out some cool animals really quick here. Let's see, let's start with this guy right here. This is actually a sun-kissed Castaci corn snake. Now, the sun-kissed gene is actually a recessive gene, and the Castaci is a locality. The Castacis get a little bit larger than a normal corn snake, and they have a little bit bigger eggs, so they're leaning a little bit more towards like the emery rat snake, but they're still a corn snake. So the Castaci sun-kissed are really something that I really love a tremendous amount. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, speaking of corn snakes, check this one out. This is a little project I've been working on for quite some time now. These are actually coral snows, and basically what the coral snow is just a more pink snow. So the snow is actually a double recessive mutation, being that it's albino and aneurystic, but then the coral snow part is polygenic, which basically just means we're breeding the pinkest snow to the pinkest snow, and every generation they get more and more pink.
It's big, scary, and pink!
We're also using this exact same thing with ghost corns and aneurystic corns to get really pink animals, and some of them are really spectacular. So I'm loving those guys. And then another corn snake would actually be a hypo sun-kissed. So we looked at the sun-kissed Castaci. This is actually a hypo sun-kissed corn snake. And you can see with the sun-kissed, they're just kind of a little bit more blown out. They got a really cool head pattern. And of course, this one happens to be hypo as well, which makes it kind of cool. But corn snakes are neat because they're great pets. They have a lot of eggs. eggs. I mean, a big female is going to have mid-20s in egg count. They'll double clutch. So, sometimes you'll get 40 or 50 eggs per year out of a female, which is pretty cool. Now, something that doesn't lay eggs but has live babies are these albino checkered garter snakes. And I've always loved garter snakes. I just, ever since I was a kid, I was catching them out in the woods. So now that I breed several species of garter snakes, including a handful of mutations, it's pretty cool because I just love them to death. And it's great because, they can eat worms and fish. We feed them rodents here, but if you ever want a snake that doesn't eat rodents, garter snakes are a great thing. And you can see, look at how docile it is. I mean, that's a cool snake. Hello, little guy. It's awesome, isn't it? All right. Oh, what? I already showed you guys a scaleless Texas rat snake, but I have to show this one off. Remember when I was talking about how we're breeding for specific colors? Take a look at that little monkey right there. Whew! That thing is red and absolutely gorgeous. So again, just a scaleless Texas rat snake, but we're working on specific lines that just make them really brilliant. And these guys are definitely getting there for sure. Let's see what else I got. Oh yeah, hognose snakes. You guys know I love hognose snakes. So I can't wait to produce a whole bunch of different ones this year. And we work with albinos and pinks and anacondas and all kinds of cool stuff. So hognose snakes are really cool. They don't get really large. They have great personalities. And I always say, as soon as you get your first hognose snake, you're absolutely hooked. Much like a ball python or blue-tongued skink, they're just amazing animals and super cool. So there you go, hognose snakes. I can't wait to be hatching those little babies. And sometimes when they hatch, it's so cute. They hatch out, and of course their defense mechanism is to play dead. So sometimes when they first hatch, you open up the box, they all just kind of roll upside down and stick their tongue out. It's super, super cute. Speaking about another cute snake, look at this guy here. This is actually an albino Kunasir Island rat snake. Just look at those eyes. How crazy is that, huh? But again, these guys come from the Japan area. They're super neat animals. They actually come in a blue phase as well. We work with those, and as they get older, they're green as babies, but as they get older, they turn this kind of turquoise blue color. Really beautiful. But these are the albinos, and actually over in Japan, they kind of worship the albinos. There's a handful of temples there that keep the albino Kunasir Islands, and they kind of worship them. So it's kind of cool. So really cool snakes. Something that I've been working with for a number of years and are really cool. Let's see here. Oh, speaking of Texas rat snakes, like we showed you the scaleless, this is actually a snow Texas rat snake. And to be honest with you, I don't know of many people that are working with these guys. These kind of cropped up with all of our breeding, and this is actually an albino and an anuthristic. So the first thing that happened was an anuthristic popped up in one of our clutches, and we were like, well, that looks weird. So we raised it up, read it out. Sure enough, it was a recessive mutation. And then, of course, albinos have been around for a little while, and we bred them together and produced the first snows, which are pretty cool. And of course, we'll try to take all of those mutations into scaleless as well, so we can get tons of different things. But there you have it, a snow Texas rat, pretty cool. And let's see, one last one for this one, and I'm going to take a breath here. Of course, the Rhino rat snakes. You guys know how awesome these guys are, and look at that little guy right there. Now that's a beautiful snake. Now we've had success over the last 3 years breeding our Rhino rats, and they typically have anywhere from 5 to 7 eggs, and they'll double clutch about the same size, which is pretty cool. So, but it did take us about 3 or 4 years to get our adults big enough to breed. I don't know if that was just coincidence or if all of them take that long, but we just didn't have success that first year when they were 2 years old. We needed to wait till they were 3 or 4, and then they started producing well. Rhino rat snakes, awesome snakes. I really started breeding snakes when I was into colubrids mainly, and since I went into boas and pythons and lizards and a whole bunch of stuff, but I still always have that affinity towards colubrids because that's really what got me into snakes when I was younger. And of course, this one is a radically cool snake. I showed you guys the scaleless Texas rats a couple times earlier. This happens to be a leucistic scaleless Texas rat. Essentially, it's a double recessive mutation. The scaleless is a recessive mutation, and the leucistic, which is basically just an all-white Texas rat snake, is a recessive mutation. And that's these two put together, and they're definitely really wacky. There's some at the bottom I think that is really cool. I've always liked the white snakes. The scaleless snakes are cool, but some people think they're kind of creepy because they're all wrinkly and stuff like that, but I just love them to death, and I think they're super cool. And actually, a snake I've been working with for many, many years is actually the Arizona Mountain King Snakes, and we really started the show with the no block eyes, which are very similar to the Arizona Mountain King Snakes, but of course these are from the Arizona area, and these are just what they usually call pyros or pyromilana, and they're a mountain king snake that is obviously red, black, and yellow, just like a milk snake. And they're the same genus of a milk snake, but a different species, of course. And these guys don't get really big. This is probably an 8 or 9 year old female right here that's just out of hibernation. She'll have maybe 3 to 5 eggs, and that's about it. So they're pretty cool animals. And about, I don't know, maybe 15 or so years ago, maybe even 18 years ago, I was able to buy the very first albino Arizona Mountain King Snakes. And that's these guys right here. And back then, I bought them from a guy down in the St. Louis area who actually had bought one Arizona Mountain King Snake from a pet shop over here, another one from a pet shop, put them together and produced albinos, which was crazy. And believe it or not, I paid something like $50,000 for the whole project. So they were big bucks back then. And they're still not really cheap animals, but they're, again, they're more affordable now, obviously. And I just love them. I love the albino milk snakes and the albino tricolors, so they're really cool. And then the Arizona Mountain Kings are even more awesome. So I was pretty excited about that. Let's see what else I got here, guys. Let's see here. Let me show you this one really quick. This is kind of a cool snake. This is actually what they call a Theri or a Nuevo Leonis milk snake. Sometimes they're called a variable king as well. And again, they're very similar to, again, the milk snakes as well as the pyros. They come in all kinds of things. This would be considered a milk snake phase. There's actually buckskin phase, there's orange ones, and there's even black ones, melanistic phase. Again, these guys are maybe a 4 foot long snake, 6 to 8 eggs, but really variable. It's neat because you can have a clutch of 6 or 7 eggs and literally have 6 or 7 completely different looking snakes, but they're not a hybrid. That's a pure breed. They're just that variable. So that's pretty awesome for sure. And then, you know, gosh, there's a whole host of Brooks King snakes that I'm really into. You know, this happens to be one of our new ones that are coming up here. And again, the Brooks Kings are that South Florida King Snake, much like the Goinai and the blotched Kings we showed you guys earlier, but these are the South Florida King Snakes. And this is a Ghost Brooks King, which is actually an anuthristic and hypomelanistic. And there's all kinds of flavors of Brooks Kings that are really cool. And I could go on forever here, guys, about colubrids, but as you can see, the colubrid season is upon us. I'll do plenty of videos about breeding and things coming up in the future, but for now, I'm gonna kind of leave you with that because there's so much work to be done, and it's going to be awesome to be working with these animals again. And as always, not only today, but through the entire breeding season, I'm Facebooking and tweeting my way through things. So make sure to follow me over at SnakeBytesTV or on Instagram at SnakeBytes.tv. Until next week, you've been watching Snake Bites.
Hi, I'm Peter Birch, an Aussie bloke who loves wildlife. My respect for nature started when I was a young boy in rural New South Wales. Since then, it's exploded into an obsession. New episodes every Thursday, only on Animal Bites TV.